Always looking for quiet places in the house where I can do a video, and this is what I've got today. Don't laugh too hard. I'm afraid that this video's title will make it seem like it's a joke, but it's really not. I'm going to talk about, okay, extraterrestrials and religious faith and Christianity in particular, but I'm just going to start right out by telling you that because of what's called the Phoenix Lights in particular, I take this kind of seriously. I actually knew some guy who he had a he has a security clearance. He's spent his career working in aerospace. He knows what aircraft look like. He knows the kind of aircraft we have in our arsenal. He was there in Phoenix. I think was it 1997. Anyway, it was March, I think, of '97, when hundreds and hundreds of people in Phoenix and really across Arizona saw these craft in the sky, and it was multiple craft. It wasn't just one, and hundreds or dozens of them anyway had video camcorders. We called them back then. I don't remember what state of development YouTube would have been in or if it existed, but you can find these with adaptations. A lot of these videos are on YouTube today. Just look up Phoenix Lights. These things, they were behaving in a fashion that no craft that we know of is supposed to be able to behave. They were not making any noise at all. Huge, huge things that were hovering close to Earth, no sound at all, and then they'd take off. And again, hundreds of people saw them. The governor, then governor of Arizona, Fife Symington, saw them. He promised the people that he would get to the bottom of it. And a day later, he comes out with a guy in an alien suit and comes up to the podium and ha 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 ha. This is just a big joke. There's nothing there to see. And he admitted recently that he was leaned on by higher ups to do that. He didn't say who the higher ups were, but there obviously was a there, and it was another cover up. So and there's so many other things. A lot of them are misidentifications or hoaxes. Probably Nick Pope, who used to work for the British intelligence service, said that 95% of them are probably there's nothing to them, but that leaves 5%. And you can look up Nick Pope's work online too. There's enough stuff there that people who are serious and fair-minded should at least allow for the possibility of extraterrestrial visits. It's not to say that I am 100% certain. I haven't been beamed up to any craft or shaken hands with a little gray guy. I don't know. But there's enough to seriously consider the question. And I especially, obviously, in this series, want to consider it in the context of faith, because people of faith seem to be disturbed by this. Some of them are disturbed because Genesis doesn't allow for anything like this, they say, and the Bible is literally true. And if there were other advanced forms of life in the universe, that would seem to belie the uh, chronologies and the histories that we have in sacred texts. That's not a hang up for me in particular, because I've studied throughout my career oral traditions, and I know, and you don't have to be a scholar in this area, it just makes sense that people who are at a rather simple cultural stage, if they see something that is technologically far, far beyond them, they're going to interpret it in terms that they understand. Now, I'm not saying, by the way, this is not me buying into the Eric von Daniken theory that angels or Olympian gods in the Greek tradition and all that stuff, those are actually alien visitors that simple peoples did not know how to interpret, so they transformed them into mythological gods. Uh, Eric von Daniken, by the way, seems to be a very devout Catholic, so you don't have to be an atheist to take this sort of idea seriously. But my only point about Genesis is that I think that a work that was at first transmitted orally and then went through a long process of transcription into a text that again was passed along for many, many centuries. People are going to process even a purely divine revelation, a divine pronouncement straight from the mouth of God. They're going to have to transform that into something that they can understand. So I I'm not particularly, me personally, I'm not upset by what might appear apparent contradictions with the literal text of a work that's thousands of years old. I'm more challenged, and I think really most people of faith are challenged by the idea that we have possibly these beings out there who are more advanced than we are, and that raises questions about exactly where we are in the chain of creation. We like to think of ourselves as above squirrels and cats and dolphins and pretty close to angels. You know, we're created in God's image. We're in some ways superior to angels. But what if we have beings in the universe that are so sophisticated that they're just zipping around all sorts of planetary systems, and they have throughout our history visited us and zipped off again, and it would seem that now we've become the dolphins or even the squirrels. We're not quite as high up the ladder as our religious beliefs claim that we are. And that seems to be a real stumbling block for a lot of people. The main point that I want to make is that please, I would say don't ever rate the superiority of God's creatures on the basis of their technological skill. If it is true that there are vastly more advanced technological beings than we in the universe, that doesn't mean that they're better. That doesn't mean that they're more moral, that they love goodness more, that they're closer to God. Some of the reports that one hears have them actually being kind of wicked. You know, not only do they come down to ranches and laser off the tongues and the private parts and the heads of cows and livestock, but they even take human beings up there into their craft and tinker around with them and perform all kinds of experiments with them. We have people like that in our society. They're often the brightest people that we have. They're the cream of the cream. And they wear these little white lab coats, and they take monkeys and put a third arm on them, or they take out half of a dog's brain. And if you ask them, why are you doing this? They can't even give us a reason. It's just kind of like, oh, we wish to see what will happen. It's interesting to mess with this, and you know what could happen? Nothing. Something is interesting. And no, that's not good. You may be the brightest person in the whole country, but you're a moral imbecile. If you don't have a good reason, probable reason to think that this would benefit humanity or other members of the animal kingdom or something, if you're just screwing around with these poor animals that are in your cages, we don't like that. That's a moral stupidity. And if the aliens are the same category of being, that they can't understand that they're not supposed to take us and mess around with us, then it would seem that God has actually neglected them. Maybe we have to talk to them and enlighten them about some things, some really the most important things that they haven't found out while they've been zipping around the arms of the galaxy. It may indeed be, and this is, I think, a very real possibility, if these visits are actually taking place, we could be dealing with robots or with bio-robotic hybrids, because I don't really see how, not that I'm an expert in this field, but I don't know how you could travel over hundreds of light years with all of the life cycle problems that would entail, not to mention all the food that you'd have to pack on board. I don't see how a biological being like us could do that. So it seems to me pretty clear that we could be dealing with something robotic if these things actually do exist. That would also answer the troubling questions, like in the case of the Phoenix Lights. If these superior beings are so smart, and if they've devoted so much time to being covert and not being spotted, then why is the fleet traveling over one of the major metropolises of the Southwest? Who gave that order? That doesn't seem too bright. But it could be that if they are robots, they, being programmed, have processed some set of data and reached a bad conclusion. They may be encountering things to which their pre-programmed intelligence is not effectively responding, and maybe sometimes that leads them to do things that appear just outright dumb. In fact, I think that's quite probable. But again, maybe this was a society that knew goodness and understood that you must always honor the spark of God that is in every creature. Every creature has a soul, and you must consider that creature to be your brother or your sister, and you must treat that creature with respect. Well, maybe and I think we are at great risk of going down this same path. Maybe they, in becoming so technologically sophisticated, perhaps even to the point of fusing themselves with artificial intelligence, maybe they've forgotten basic goodness. And again, maybe our task now is to reintroduce them to it. It may be that if they're that sophisticated and that liberated from basic morality, you could say, well, good luck with that. They're going to kill us all, or they're going to enslave us all. And again, it seems to me that we're doing a pretty good job of that to ourselves right now in some of these dangerous turns that we're starting to negotiate in our history. But we know, as people of faith, that we're all going to die in the flesh to this world anyway. We're all mortal in worldly terms. So what do you got to lose? Why not, since the sand is going to run out of your hourglass eventually anyway, why not lead a good life up to the end? And if we do confront an alien civilization that appears heartless and brutal, just as if there's no if anymore, when we confront societies in our world that are becoming increasingly brutal as they become more high tech, we need to remember that it's not death that's the enemy, because we know that we're going to die in the body anyway. The important thing is not to die in the soul. The enemy is to give up your soul, to surrender, in order to eke out a few more pitiful months or years of life in this body. We need to keep that in our mind. It's in that regard that we are high beings, that we're close to the throne of God. It's in that respect, perhaps, that maybe we're superior to our alien visitors. We must hold on to that. When you hear about aliens and when you think about these issues, have fun with it, but don't be afraid of it. God is in your heart if you keep him there. It's up to you.